Good morning, everyone. Good to see so many faces, lots of questions in the last panel. I'm Gaurang Khemka. I'm an architect and an urban designer, and I run my own practice called URBNarc. We're headquartered out of Singapore with offices in Spain and in India, and doing a lot of hospitality work across the world, from Canada all the way up to China, and of course in Australia as well. And we always try to be as sustainable as we can. It's a simple ethos built into the practice, and it's not really about making a big hoo-ha about it. We can talk about that later.
Thank you, Gaurang. David?
Morning, everyone. I'm David Cabigao. I'm principal architect of KDAS Group, KDAS. We are actually stationed here in the Philippines, specifically in Ortigas area. We normally do hospitality, whether it's from master planning up to architectural and interior design, and even project management part. We normally do all our stuff in BIM, so that's in Building Information Modeling. And a lot of things are coming in right now, very exciting things in the Philippines, so I hope to see you, most of you, again later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Chris, please.
Hi, I'm sure you can hear me. I'm Christopher Chua. I am the co-founder and creative director of KulorGroup. We're an architecture interior design company, but I think on top of that, what we do is technical services as well. So we help owners and some private owners, small operators to do their technical services. So we kind of do like a soup to nuts kind of consultancy for within the hospitality space. So we work all the way from Latin America all the way until the Fiji Islands, throughout, mostly on resorts.
On different time zones, as we were talking
on
about
different
it
time zones,
earlier, right,
yeah.
Chris?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. So let's start. Thank you so much for the introductions. Let's start with Gaurang. Gaurang, your company emphasizes an integrated approach to master planning and design. How does this method enhance sustainability and functionality in hospitality developments?
So it's not so much just master planning and architecture. We try to do it all the way through with interiors as well. So most of the projects that we take on, we do master planning, architecture, and interiors. And sometimes we've even gone to the extent of uniform design, graphics. And one of the reasons for doing that is really to integrate the entire process from the materials that are used to the whole ethos again, like I said. When you look at master planning, becomes very critical. It's about, a lot of times a developer would come and want like 300 keys on a land, which can't really hold that kind of capacity. So we really work hard with them to convince them to do a smaller inventory, think of ways to actually still get their ROI. And, less can be more at times. But, to try to convince a developer how to go about it, that starts at the master planning stage. And then during architecture, you kind of follow through with working out methods to get a return for your clients while still ensuring that, you can do good design, sustainable design, and not just try to maximize everywhere. So that's really the fundamental approach in integrating that practice solution.
Thank you so much for sharing that insights. Now let's go back to Romolo. Romolo, if you can just do your quick introduction, please.
First of all, sorry, I was delayed because I was in the other room. I was waiting for me to be called there. But anyway, thank you very much for inviting me. I am Romolo Valentino Nati. I'm from Italy, but I have been in the Philippines now for more than 16 years. And the company that I founded together with my partner, Filipino Jojo Leviste, has already 15 years. And the name is IDC, Italpinas Development Corporation. Our value proposition since the very beginning are sustainable design and accessible pricing with Italian and Filipino, let's say, architecture. And we focus mainly on in developing projects outside Metro Manila. Since day one, we started in Cagayan de Oro, where now we have several projects. Now we are expanding. We are in Luzon. We are going to Palawan, Bukidnon, Bataan, etc., etc. So thank you very much for inviting me again.
Thank you for that, Romulo. And while I have you, I have a question for you. And let's talk about innovative strategies for sustainability. Could you share some innovative strategies you have successfully implemented to integrate sustainability into the architectural design process, particularly in the hospitality sector?
Okay, so with IDC now we incorporated two subsidiaries. One IDC Homes that will focus on economic and development, so affordable units, and IDC Prime, which is focusing on developing projects mainly for hospitality, and when I say hospitality, I mean hotel, mixed-use building in terms of service apartments and condotel. Now, what we have been implementing in terms of sustainable design features in our existing buildings is mainly, we call it passive green design strategies. So we mainly integrate the design, the sustainable design from the very early stage of the conceptualization of the project. We enhance natural ventilation, shading, of course, water saving, water recycling, rainwater harvesting. So all those strategies that are called passive because they do not, there is not a heavy implementation of high technological features, which increase obviously the price of the final product for the end users. Having said that, we also integrate solar photovoltaic panels on the rooftop for the production of renewable energy, and we are expanding, enhancing this implementation of photovoltaic panels on the rooftop to create energy so that unit owners and later on hotel management companies will save on their water, of course, and power bill. So we now sign two projects with two management contracts with Ascot, one in Cagayan de Oro, one in Santo Tomas Batangas, that they will manage these projects through Citadines, their brand Citadine, and we are signing more projects with other hospitality companies. So more or less what we are going to do, we are already doing with this in the hospitality design. We will implement similar strategies that successfully we have implemented in the design and development of mixed-use condominiums.
Just a quick follow-up on that. How do you design a solar-powered ready hotels and resorts? Since you mentioned the solar.
Okay, so we avail also the expertise of developers. I mean, suppliers and developers of photovoltaic power plant. We cannot call power plants, of course, what we do in our buildings, because, as you know, I mean, more or less, in order to produce 1 megawatt with 1 megawatt peak for a photovoltaic power plant, you need 1 hectare. So considering that in our buildings we have less than 1 hectare, we can produce a much lower amount of power. But that's not a very, I would say, complicated things to do. In general, the system is, we call smart system. You have a building that can source energy from 3 different sources. One is the grid, one is the genset, and one is the photovoltaic panels. Of course, genset can also be replaced with batteries. When the power is produced during the day, the batteries can store the power that can be used later on by the units. In general, this system is managed by a software that at any point in time decides which source is most economical at that moment to get the energy. And of course, we are also banking on the net metering system. I don't know if you know the net metering system, which is already implemented by the law in the Philippines, allow a producer of power, like if you have a roof, you have photovoltaic panels, you can use your power, but when you don't use your power, you can sell your power to the grid. When this will be fully implemented in the entire Philippines, the landscape will really change in the Philippines in terms of implementation of photovoltaic panels.
Great insights. Thank you so much, Romolo.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move to David. David, you were mentioning about the combining ancient building methods with modern design. How does it create unique and sustainable hospitality environments that resonate with today's guests? How do you do that?
Thank you for that. Normally, it's like basically coming back on the old days, on how the older generation, older people have managed to come up with their own architecture back in the days. So it's more of like taking the ethos that they have come through, basically, for example, what are the alternatives that we have for the roofing design that we've been doing before. So for now, we try to emulate all those specific elements or specific materials that can easily reduce heat gain in our structure, regardless whether it's a villa or it's specific structure or multi-story structure. And also another thing is that we love doing those rammed earth methodology. Rammed earth is basically part of what we get from natural resources. Now, there's a couple of questions whether it's totally available in different areas. Only when it is available, then we try to utilize it as much as possible. So more so with the use of bamboo. So recently we came to Bali and then we tried to study about how is it going to work for the Philippine setting. They keep on telling us and educating us on the type of bamboo that we really have here. It's not as strong as what we need here because it's all about the wind strength of what we're having in the Philippines compared to Bali, Indonesia. So I think it's more of how we're going to approach that kind of sustainable management in terms of materials and available materials with the locality of our projects and not just relying on the modern products that we have. So long as it's modern and effective, we can always take alternatives on whatever is available in the localities.
Where have you implemented that? Can you cite specific examples?
Right now, it's all on the design stage. Say, for example, one of our projects in Pangasinan, we did a master plan of 40 hectares in Pangasinan right now. We integrated bamboo use and bioswale at the same time. So it's both like regenerating cooling system for each and every village that we've scattered in the entire 40 hectares. And at the same time, trying to use the eminent supply of bamboo in the area at the same time. So it's more of how are you going to balance whatever is resource in these particular areas.
Getting popular now. Yeah, you mentioned Bali. It's really a lot of hotels in Bali are now embracing that architecture. Okay, let's move on to Chris. Chris, question now for you is, how do you design sensibilities? How do your design sensibilities incorporate sustainability in master planning, architecture, and interiors? And where does this process begin?
I think my panelists have said quite a lot already, but from what we stand from, or at least where I stand from, there are three words that I always use: people, planet, and profit. At the end of the day, when we start a project, I need to understand the profit. And when I talk about profit, it's what the project is for, how is it going to make the money, how much of the construction budget has sustainability ingrained into it. Because sometimes, and we all know this, we can talk about it many times, but if the budget's not there, then we have to go back to really talking about master planning and architecture and how that solves sustainability without those MEP budgets and all the kind of other things that are involved. Of course, when I talk about planet, then it's all about the design and considering site and context, materials, people. Of course, we know people. Any project that comes in, we also have to talk about how the project itself affects the town around it, the people that work in it, so on and so forth. I think, as an example, we're working with the Green Climate Fund quite luckily on a project in the Galapagos. And the Galapagos is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's really difficult, but the people factor for sustainability is key there because we really need to talk about teaching them how to build, how to be self-sustaining, how to fish, and then we build labs and marine labs within the master planning or even to conserve animals with the Galapaguera, the turtles there and all that. So I think holistically, what we do, we step back first and we really talk about the money, and nobody wants to talk about the money, but I tend to like to talk about the money because then I understand the core of what sustainability means to this project first, because there are owners that don't really care about it. Then it becomes our responsibility as architects and designers to deal with it without the money, and that's how I start a project.
Very good point, Chris, because after all, if we don't address the 3 Ps, then it's not sustainable after all. Yeah, 3 Ps must be there: people, planet, and profitability, prosperity. Okay, back to you, Romolo. how have you maximized the green features in your projects to enhance sustainability? And how do these features contribute to the overall guest experience?
Okay. First of all, I think that for any designer and developer, it's very important to have your project rated by a green rating system. No, we have Edge. We use Edge, which is the one developed by the World Bank through IFC. But there are many, no, Verde, LED, etc., etc. So I think that's very important. So because nowadays there is what is called greenwashing. Now everybody's green, but you need to understand, above all, to protect the end users and the consumer in general. I think it's very important that your product, your service must be rated green. Having said that, in terms of customer experience, and I think it's very much related to a healthier environment. If you recall, before COVID, I noticed that in the Philippines, for example, there was not too much attention to natural green ventilation, cross-wind ventilation, open spaces like terraces, balconies, or even al fresco. I remember it was coming from Europe, we like to be al fresco, to enjoy, even because in the Philippines, the weather is nice most of the time, it's warm, etc. So I think that and after COVID, these kind of experiences are becoming more mainstream now. People like it. People like to enjoy, to open their windows, to enjoy their balconies, and also al fresco. So this is related also to the experience of the customer. From my point of view, their experience with the natural elements, the sun, the wind, the shade, sometimes even the rain and things like that. So this is the kind of experience that I would like to enhance in our project. I mean, to bring closer the experience of the customer to natural elements, which is also, of course, the biophilia, which is another branch very interesting we are implementing in our project. I mean, all the positive effect that being close to vegetations and flowers and trees and it brings to customer psychologically and physically. This is another benefit that I think has been not properly utilized, and that's what we are trying to do.
Thank you for highlighting those, Romolo. Yes. Okay, now back to Gaurang. Gaurang, can you provide an example of a hospitality project where designing for a unique, historic, natural, or urban environment led to innovative solutions? And what lessons can be drawn for future developments?
Sure, yeah. We were doing a project in Maldives where the client came up. It was a very small piece of land, and they normally end up reclaiming land, and that kind of definitely harms the ecology, the marine ecology. It doesn't cost that much, so how do you kind of create an amount of inventory where the project becomes economically sustainable and not try to damage the environment? So in this case, it was not so much less is more, but we had to get a certain amount of inventory. So we actually, I wish I had a picture to show it, but what we did was, and instead of the typical on-water villas, which again, you got to run services to, put stilts on, again, damages the coral and the ecology. So we actually, like they say, necessity is the mother of invention sometimes, and we came up with an idea of actually doing a steel barge and putting a motorable villa inventory. And it's under production now. We're designing it, and it can be it's modular, it's assembled, and you can ship it to site, and you can add inventory as you go along. And it's motorable, so you put a butler on board. Of course, you can do that in Maldives, where it's a very high-end, high-luxury product. But can it be replicated? Can it be done at a smaller scale? Potentially, yes. It's really thinking out of the box for different solutions. Kind of like Chris said, when you're doing something in Galapagos, you got to think differently. What do you do over there? How do you work with the developer to understand what the profit motive is, but to meet that target, but do it creatively? And if you can understand that, that's how we did it in this location. We're also doing it in another location in Bhutan right now. Back to what David was saying, we did it earlier where we used it was interesting. I saw a lot of mud plastered, but it was mud plaster on concrete block. So it was like, that's so counterintuitive. So we ended up actually getting artisans and working out how to do it with rammed earth, the buildings. Of course, that's at a smaller scale. So you can do that for a 1-story or a maximum a 2-story building. But when you do designing in cities, that's not possible. So you've got to think differently again. And some of the old precepts, they work. Unfortunately, we're all going the way of technology all the time. We use e-glass. If we can instead do overhangs, and if we can articulate our building like that, like we used to do in the older times, it's the policies have changed as well. GFA, FAR, and none of that is now. It's all under that so-called claimable GFA. So therefore, everybody builds to the edge, then puts, glass, e-glass, or double glazing when you can avoid that. So the older principles of design and architecture can still be applied to really sometimes not overuse technology. So it's kind of like trying to do that for every different project.
Yeah, a lot of fresh perspectives and insightful discussion here. Thank you so much, Gaurang. Now back to you again, David. How do you see the growing importance of sustainability influencing guest preferences and expectations? And how should hotels adapt to these evolving demands?
To my current understanding, more of like going back to Romulus mentioned a while ago about what people realized after COVID-8. It's more of the spaces that we're going to be providing to them. The space itself is already the luxury. Now, most people right now are still on the revenge traveling industry sort of thing. But however, sooner or later, it will change. The next target market that we're going to be hitting are the people who are the Gen Zs right now. Later on, they have the buying capabilities already. However, it's more of the quality of guest experience that they're going to be looking at. What is sustainable in guest experience per se? Whenever they used to understand how things are being built or where it was resourced, that's already an acceptable sustainability. But more so in our ethos in the company, we wanted to go an approach whereby both the operations, the capex, and the guest experience are all together being beneficial. Specifically on how we're going to minimize the cost of building, at the same time, the cost of operating it, and the latter. So by the use of normal sustainable materials, just like what Gaurang said a while ago, you don't really need to go back or keep on going with the advancement of technology, whereby you can always rely on the natural resources that you already have in the location. So that's how you're going to benefit most, and that's what's going to be acceptable for the next or the future guest experience that we'll be looking for. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just going to add to that. I mean, it's back to basics sometimes. And, we're designing big, massive buildings now and putting a lot of green on it. That doesn't make a building green. The embedded concrete, the amount of glass being used, these are all, high-intensive, high-energy components and materials. So it's kind of rethinking, going back to basics at times, which somehow seems not to be the trend.
Very important point, yes.
I think, just to add on, sorry.
Sure.
I think it's all the process of how we're going to, as consultants, it's on us how we're going to educate our clientele on what sustainability really is. So sustainability means that if your material actually came to so many carbon exposure when it was produced, no? So it doesn't really become sustainable in a sense because there's a lot of stages that it gone through, and you won't even gonna be tracing it on one by one if you don't really know what the core properties of those materials are made. So those are very special and those are very important for us to educate the clients.
Very good point there. Okay, thank you, David. Please scan the QR code for any questions that you may have. We'll go through the questions. I just have one more question for Chris before we read the questions from the audience. Chris, have you encountered new technologies or gained insights from a specific project that is shaping your approach to sustainable design?
Okay, I swear we didn't rehearse any of this, but basically my two panelists wanted to say what I wanted to say, which is The question about technology, I think we just over leverage it just as an excuse. We paste it on a facade, we paste it on a building, we think it's green, right? And I totally agree with the panel that back to basics, just doing great design, great planning, great selection, just be cognizant of embedded carbon and what we're doing to the planet, right? And starting from there is probably the most important thing we can do, and that's a technology within itself, I would say. What else would I say? I think just to add to that, I think what I've learned is when the government or a country starts to, and I think it would happen, starts to implement laws where we start to get taxation on carbon emissions within the construction industry, within the hotel industry, or the built environment. That's when we're going to stand up and really go back to great design, right? Whether it happens now and it's 5 years' time, we never imagined that Ford cars would say electric is the way forward, right? It's always been, and the hospitality industry, unfortunately, has been a little bit behind in terms of where we're pushing, this sustainable, discussion. And I think we just need to accelerate a little bit. So that's the first learning, I think the first and biggest learning I've ever had for this particular project. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Chris. Now, I think a lot of questions are coming in. Let's start with the first one. From renewable energy, has green technology been considered in ensuring freshness of produce? Example, green refrigeration being part of the design. Okay, interesting. Who would like to take that one? Okay, David.
Okay. We'd like to talk about, in our design, before we actually do conceptualization, we'd like to talk about storyline. So this is just rooting back on the question earlier that, okay, how do we make sure that our guest experience are well valued? So it's all about the storyline, how the produce have been made, how we encountered our local neighbors, for example. Say, for example, it's actually done in a very remote area, how we encourage them to help out on this particular approach. So it's all about doing the produce, doing even the construction methodology, whatever the talents of these local neighbors that we have, we can encourage them and be part of this particular storyline. So that, in a way, is already a good talking point for us to encourage our guest experience later on. That's already a big plus for them. Not about using the actual technology that we're using right now, because in the end, we have to be back in basics and appreciate nature in general.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Next question is, what is a truly sustainable urban hotel? Who would like to take this one? Gaurang? Yes? Thank you.
Truly sustainable is not just about design. The design is the tip of the iceberg to some degree. It's operational. A lot of stuff goes into operation all the way through to the customer requirement. I was recently at a conference in Hong Kong. I just flew in last night, and WTTC was telling us how, interestingly, Philippines, I'm kind of digressing from the question a bit, framing it, a context for it, but how in Philippines they did a survey, and 99% of the Philippines travelers want sustainability in their hospitality product. It's the highest compared to the rest of Asia. So that's an interesting take. But is that happening here? Probably not at this point, but it will in the future. But back to sustainable urban and operations come in place. So from a design perspective, I can cite an example of something that I visited in Copenhagen where they've kept it small. I was talking to the owner, and he said, we could have built 100 rooms, but we built 80 because we never 100% occupancy anyway. We reduced our elevators. We reduced our heating and cooling loads. But through the entire operations, from food waste to someone talked about produce, they also grow a lot of their own stuff within the hotel, on the rooftop. So it's kind of looking at the entire ethos. Now, designers can only do so much in that space. And hotel operators also need to figure out ways to potentially incentivize guests. Simple things like, recycling the towels. We see those, they've been around for the last 20 years. Don't change my bed linen or reuse the towel. But, do people do it? Is there a way to kind of measure it? So certain hotels are doing that. The same hotel in Copenhagen I was talking about was, they give you little extra points, like they'd give you an extra something at breakfast because they're a small chain. So if if you didn't get your linen done for 2 days, for example, they'd give you something. So it's kind of building that entire ethos. I don't think there's a truly sustainable urban hotel that exists as of now. There'll be some that'll come up, but mostly boutique properties to start with. Of course, the big chains have scale, and they have customer loyalty plans, so they can actually put it back into the loyalty system and say, oh, you get extra points, so you can get an extra night or something else if you actually use a hotel sustainably as well. So it's up to the guests, in fact, I would say, not just us as designers. We can't solve everything.
Absolutely, yeah. It involves a lot of stakeholders to be truly sustainable, from the operators to the guests themselves, right? Okay, I think, talk about bamboo architecture in Bali. Yeah, so in terms of sustainable design strategies, what are the best practices in Bali that Philippines can learn from and can easily adapt when it comes to bamboo architecture? Chris, you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I don't work in the Philippines, but I can, sort of relate to this question because somehow, I don't know why, in the past 2-3 years, bamboo architecture has suddenly become trendy.
Yeah.
And it's, everyone's doing all these beautiful shapes and all that. And we're working quite closely with a contractor or a designer in Bali with bamboo architecture. We're doing it in the Galapagos, we're doing it in the Maldives, we're doing it also in Saudi even, in the Middle East. I think the biggest thing is just not have it be trendy, right? I think, we build it, we use bamboo because it's renewable, it's fast growing, it's easy to replace. But I think the biggest advice I can really put is that you must be cognizant that bamboo architecture has to be replaced very often. Even the Green School in Bali, right? Every year they have to replace columns and structures and thatch, and nobody talks about because it is renewable and because it's natural, it is like any other material that we use, it will fall apart, right? So that's the biggest, I would say, advice, that just plan it within your budget, that it will have to be replaced, and then and go for it. I mean, it's beautiful. Understand your weather considerations. Bamboo can't touch water as much because it will start to grow mold. There will be black mold. It starts to split. Things like that. And there are many workshops within Bali. Bali's a great place. There's so many workshops in Bali. You can attend 2 to 3 days. Teach you how to make models and structures. It's a beautiful course. You can just Google it online, or I can give you contacts. But I think learning about it would be a great start. Yeah.
And I think,
I'm just going to add, besides Bali, for whoever asked that question, the northeast of India, Arunachal Pradesh, they're pioneers in bamboo construction. And they haven't marketed themselves, but if you kind of happen to look it up, you'll see the amount of bamboo work that's been done over the last 50 years. Bali, Elora Hari made it trendy and famous with her TED Talks and everything. Of course, she's done a great job, undoubtedly. But like Chris said, it has to be replaced, and it can only be used for very low-key, small-scale resorts, if at all.
yes, David.
I think in a Philippine setting, what I can recommend is that if we really want to push through with the bamboo architecture, we have to be very much ready on the so-called, what we normally advise to our clients, this 3, 5, and 10-year budget planning. So in this case, we have to be very careful with 2 things. One is the maintainability, like what Chris mentioned a while ago. It's a lot harder. When we tried to study how Elora did it in Bali, they kept on telling us that it's a lot harsher elements here in the Philippines than in Bali. So that means to say that's a lot more budget that we have to take care of in terms of the maintainability. Next is the capex. So if we wanted to push on the capex, we have to really understand where do we really need to just apply bamboo. So I would say it's not going to be exactly the same as how they did it in Bali. But the thing there is that we're not limited. No, we can always do a lot of things as long as the client would actually be agreeable on whatever is going to be at stake later on.
A lot of discussions for this bamboo architecture, but very good points, yes. Okay, sorry, down to our last question, I believe, because time is running out. And I saw one interesting question about integrating waste management solution in sustainable design. Who would like to take this up? It's integrating waste management solution, which is a very big, challenge, very big issue in the hospitality industry as well. Romolo?
Maybe I can just say a few words that the segregation of waste is a very important aspect of, to reduce the impact of humanized environment into the natural environment. But the problem is that this cannot be, it's a kind of effort that must be taken first by who manage the cities, because you can segregate, but then because it happens, and not only here, also in Italy, sometimes it happens that you segregate your waste, but then when they collect the waste, they merge all the waste together. So what I'm saying is, I think it's very important that every hotel or in general establishment, condominium, they do their segregation, they do whatever they can in order to manage it properly. But I think this is really up to to government and the cities, etc. Having said that, also I would like to add that sometimes in order to do something for the environment, it's easier than what we think. Now, just give you an example. I was in Dubai recently and in our hotel, I don't know if I can mention the brand of the hotel. Anyway, it was, can I or better no? Okay, anyway, it was Dusit Hotel. They have an hotel in Dubai. And the manager told me that since 1 year, they ban the use of plastic and they only use a bottle of water that they recharge, And then I asked him, so what's the effect of that? The effect is that they do not trash. They don't put in trash. They save around, I don't remember maybe the name, 300,000, 400,000 bottles per year. So what I'm saying is maybe sometimes we are very fascinated about high technology, high tech and things, what we can do, solar panels, feature, appliances, etc. But then with a very simple decision, an hotel manager is really doing a very big impact on the environment. That's what I'm saying, that because sometimes things are easier to do it than to say.
Waste management is another big issue, another big topic that we can, spend one whole day to talk about. I was in Phuket last week and same problem also, plastic pollution and all that. Unfortunately, we have run out of time already. So we'd like to thank our panelists once again for sharing your, insights, a lot of fresh perspectives that we've gathered here. Thank you also to our